Woo!
Hey Tara,
Hi, Barry.
how's it going?
It's good. I mean, it's been a little crazy, but it's good, and I'm excited to be here with you and talk about our passion for ISAR. Yeah,
Yeah, me too. It's been so great getting to know you as board directors together for this organization. And I'm glad that you were willing to talk to me today so we could both sort of open up ISAR to other folks who might want to get involved in a great community centered group.
absolutely. Because we're realizing right now, I mean, more than ever, that's what we want and that's what we need. Like everybody coming together. And so, as you and I have been talking a lot about events and different things we can do to kind of bring ISAR into sort of a new phase, that doesn't happen without like everybody listening to this now. So I know like I'm personally excited for who I might meet and who's going to come on board and who's going to work together to make this community, you know, even more connected than it is. Mm.
Totally. We're so lucky to be able to have ESAR as a resource and then use it to be able to plan events that expose what we're doing to the wider astrological world, but also to draw from that world and expose, ESAR members and the community to folks who have been doing great astrology work, but maybe have never been involved in an organization like ESAR before.
Yeah, and even if you have heard of ESAR before, like I was looking back, like when did I exactly come on the board? So I had to pull out my little notebook, and I think it was April 2020. And I actually came on filling someone's position that left before the term was up. So I finished that up. But at the time, I didn't really know anything about ESAR. I had served on another board, Washington State Astrological Association in the past, but ESAR was new to me. And I think even from that time to now, it's still shifting and changing. And so, what you might have thought it was, and what it is becoming, and what it might be, there is just this big spaciousness around that, which is really what I think got me excited to get on board, literally, not trying to be funny here, on the board in the first place, is that opportunity. And I know, Barry, you and I both, I think, share this view, but for me, it's been so much about the people, right? The people that I have met that have become my friends and become allies and colleagues in the process of being on the ESAR board. I wouldn't trade that for anything, even with some of the tough work that we have to do, right? I mean, it is, there are things that have to be done that aren't always easy, but the connections, I mean, I wouldn't have had those opportunities otherwise. So that's the one thing that like every day I'm like, that's a blessing. It continues to be a blessing. And so every time we do something like this and then more people, connect, how would you have that otherwise? And I think that's
I mean,
one
I
of
feel
the,
the same
yeah,
way.
yeah,
I mean, I've only been on the board about 6 months now, so you and I are still developing our friendship and having
yeah,
a good time sort of
yeah,
developing what the future is. But what you're saying totally resonates with me. Like, I remember my first exposure to any sort of other astrologers, because I was self-taught and had a private practice, was going to an ESAR conference in Chicago, and it had to have been 20 years ago or
yeah.
so. And as I was telling you, like all of the lectures and workshops were great, but what I really got the most out of was like sitting next to people in the audience for a talk and chatting with them before and after and like developing relationships with other astrologers and the whole thing where, oh, your moon is there. Well,
Yeah.
that's right,
Yeah.
conjoin my Mercury and all of this stuff, those sort of fun ways that astrologers make small talk when we're getting to know each other.
Yeah, and we haven't even introduced ourselves, which is like here we are. We just come right into the conversation. But yeah, my name is Tara All, and I'm vice president for ESAR. And again, I've been on the board since 2020. But when I began, it was as marketing director, and actually, I served as marketing director all the way up to February 2023. So VP is a newer role for me, and I'm actually still kind of figuring out how I can best share my gifts and resources and talents in that way. So that's an ever kind of evolving process. But we really are here today in part because we're so excited to do different types of community things, whether it's events or ways to get together. And we are really asking for help, right? So people that want to be part of that process, help us bring people in, help us organize, help us brainstorm, all these pieces. That's really what's bringing us, to the video today. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And, I'm Barry Perlman. I am ISAR treasurer, and I've also been events coordinator. So I've been on board 6 months and was given two jobs right off the bat. And as this has been developing, it's really clear that two jobs is bigger than one person. So
Mm.
as we've been putting together our new ideas for events, we are also talking about sort of trying to find some other people out in the astrology world that are really motivated by creating and participating in community events, whether that's online webinars or in-person conferences, which of course ISAR is known for. And we definitely want other people to come and help us, not only because we need the help, but also because it's going to be fun. I mean, we're really reinventing sort of the types of events that ISAR can offer. We're really excited. The first new thing that we're working on right now is an event called A Taste of ISAR, where rather than having us sit down and listen to one person give an in-depth lecture, which is something that a lot of folks learn a lot of astrology from, but it's sort of one format of doing things that I think has always been sort of the regular way that all astro orgs have been presenting. And we're trying to do something a little bit different by having sort of multiple people doing different formats within one program. So we might have like a chart reading, a discussion between two astrologers, or an interview, and lectures that are a little bit shorter and that draw people in. And we are, of course, also always looking for people to participate on that level as well.
I love it when you said this was just recently you brought this up. You said it's more like inviting your friends on a talk show than it is. And that really sat well with me. Maybe it's my moon, Mars, and Leo in the fifth house. It's like, oh, that's so fun. Because one of my conversations are awesome. When you have a conversation with someone, that's when a new idea sparks up and something bounces back and forth. And I find oftentimes, I do a lot of teaching and lecturing, but sometimes it feels like I'm just talking, right? Just me talking for an hour long, which isn't bad, but these opportunities to do more interview conversational, bouncing things back and forth, you really sort of, in my mind, like there's a synergy that comes in that you don't get sometimes when you're just in your pre-planned stuff. And I will also say it's scary to not know exactly where something's going to go, right? So if we just say like today we don't have a script,
Exactly,
so
like right now.
like right now, so it's a little bit like, ooh, what's going to happen? But also, when we plan too much, then sometimes there is no room for sort of that spontaneous stuff to rise or to come forward. So I think it's for all of us to give a little more room to have that space, then stuff really starts to come through. Even the archetypes, right? They'll make themselves known. Like literally, we're astrologers, right? So, oh my gosh, all of a sudden a planet or a sign or whatever is making its way through. And, maybe I planned a whole talk on Saturn, but it's really Neptune that wants to show up, but I'm all forced into, my Saturn world. So I'm saying that type of thing. I just like opening the door. So that's why I say like conversations that inspire us, that empower us, that really help us all become more of like what we are. Like that's what I want for everybody. So not just astrologers, but especially because we have the tools to really help look at that and to bring those things to consciousness. The more I think about the people that have done that for me, right? Or the situations I've been in where someone said something or sparked something, and all of a sudden, I get a little more piece of me back, right? Which helps me live my life better, or even just feel more whole or more connected. Like astrologers, like when we're not, fussing around with too many things, like we can really do that. And I these days too, Barry, I think you probably heard me say this, but instead of thinking so much about what we don't want, right, or pushing back on things, I just think the focus should be on what do we want, and that's where the energy goes. And so that's part of the invitation today is like that people that want that want like, yes, I am about this, and let's go do that thing. That's where the difference is going to come in. And that doesn't mean we don't still need to deal with some things of the past and get some resolution. But I'm especially, I know we're also going to talk about Pluto, right? Pluto now in Aquarius, which is sitting right on Isar's ascendant, right? So hello, we're definitely going through some interesting changes and shifts and transformations. But this to me, like that's part of the invitation with that energy.
Totally. I mean, I love that you mentioned Pluto sitting on the ascendant of Isar. So with the chart that we as an org use as our birth chart, we do have like a first degree of Aquarius ascendant. So Pluto has been sitting there for a while, and we're experiencing that now. As I said, I'm a new board director. I was an active practicing astrologer for many years, and then retired from my practice a few years ago. Never really thought that I would be involved in an astrological community organization at this point. But, having reached a certain level of success in my career, one of the joys in participating in ISAR is that we have opportunities to provide to other astrologers who have maybe been out there building their own careers or their hobbies, online. These days, you can become a pretty competent astrologer without actually ever meeting another astrologer in person, because there's so many good like online
Yeah. Yeah.
universities and videos and podcasts and people really giving quality astrology information. But I do fear that the community piece, which is actually really fun, can get lost when we're all in our own little bubbles at home doing all of our astrology online. I recognize the irony that I'm here in my own house, in my
Mhm.
bubble,
You
online with
do.
you right now.
Yeah.
But still, the opportunity to build relationships with other astrologers who I may not know yet, but if I can help expose the world to their work, I'm really excited about that. I mean, I remember going to conferences throughout my time as an astrologer and seeing the folks that were running the orgs and not knowing what was going on. It seemed like they were having a really good time with each other, and then knew each other, and there was that collaborative energy. But I never really felt like I was part of it. I mean, I don't know if I was waiting for some invitation that was never going to come, or was too focused on other things. But now that I'm in the position where I'm on a board of an org like this, I do want to extend the invitation to reach out to us, not only to potentially participate in our events, but to help us plan them. And I tend to be a believer that if someone is very enthusiastic and passionate about what they're doing, that just authentically comes through in what they share. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking, as we're sort of looking for other people to be involved. There are the master astrologers who we've seen speaking and lecturing for years, and we really appreciate their wisdom and want them to keep doing that. And also, there's a bunch of folks who maybe have never felt that they could enter this world. And I'm saying, yes, please do. Please reach out to us.
No, because we need, so the thing is, we don't, I mean, again, there's value in all of it, but I just think right now, especially with that Pluto on our ascendant, that the diversity, the creativity, right? The innovation, the different ways of looking at things. That's one thing I think about Aquarius, right? It has that. I sometimes think of it like looking through a crystal, right? And then you get like the prisms, right? Or you see the sort of the different ways that the light takes or goes through. That's how I visualize that sign oftentimes. Well, I mean, you're an Aquarius, so you can tell us how that feels.
I definitely am a very Aquarius.
Yeah, but like it's like you look through them all of a sudden, oh, and you get this and this. And I think that that's what we need. So more of the same doesn't get me to a different space of consciousness in myself or with, with anybody else. So that those streams of creativity are huge. And even just even if you're not interested in like involving in and getting involved or volunteering in a capacity, it takes a lot of time. Just the feedback of just ideas of what would you like? What do you not like? What have you been to that didn't work, right? What ideas? And even if you thought, well, this could probably never happen, with the right amount of people and the right amount of investment, things can happen. So we want to hear about that. And then that could be just as simple as shooting us an email, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which we have info, at isarastrology.com. You can always be sending us any ideas or anything that you're thinking about.
Please, yes, info@isarastrology.com.
Mhm.
ISAR stands for International Society for Astrological Research. So we have joked amongst the board that we want to put the R back in research. Research is one of the things that the organization was founded upon. And when we talk about research, that can mean anything from, quantitative research where people are crunching numbers using lots of charts to more qualitative research where people are giving feedback on their own experience, whether, the clients that they've seen or as they've studied more. Most astrologers are to some degree self-taught, which means, and this is always one of the qualities I love the most about astrologers, is I find us to be pretty smart thinkers, because a lot of us have had to go against the grain to even begin to study something that not everybody respects, and that a lot of people have a lot of misunderstandings about. So when I'm talking about research, I'm saying to be able to bring up the ideas that we have and discuss them together in a way where we're advancing the whole branch of knowledge that we're participating in. One example of the type of thing that I would love to see. I've had this wild idea. So I am someone that still uses like a quadrant house system, meaning I use porphyry.
I use the same
But I
one. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. But a lot of our colleagues over the years that I've been practicing have shifted to whole sign
Yeah.
houses.
Mhm.
No disrespect there at all. Just because that's not what I use doesn't mean I don't believe in it. But I've often thought, okay, if you learned astrology and your birth chart had like a 12th house sun with like the same sign rising. So let's say you had your sun at 6 degrees Cancer and then your rising was 25 degrees Cancer. Like in the house system that I use, that means that you are a 12th house sun. And that means something very different than if you switch to whole sign and now you're a first house sun.
Oh,
And so I've been curious, like, to hear from people who maybe learned astrology using a quadrant house system like Placidus or Porphyry and learned about themselves as a 12th house sun, and then
hmm.
discovered whole sign houses and changed the way they saw themselves as a sun, because now they're a first house son. I would like to hear testimony from those people because I'm kind of curious about what
Yeah.
that self knowledge process was like.
I love that because actually, right now, house systems have been really been on my mind, right? Like even just playing around with, do I want to keep using porphyry? Been using it for the last, for my 13 years of my practice, right? And that's partly because I learned evolutionary astrology, right? And the Jeffrey Wolf Green School uses porphyry. But
Okay.
now, as I'm like, I say sometimes I take this from my friend Colin Bedell, non-denominational. I like to say I'm non-denominational. Like it just kind of feels good to say that. I don't like to be like identify with just one thing in it. Um, and so now I'm playing around with that. So this is great. And this is the type of thing where this could be, I mean, we could just get a bunch of us hanging out and sharing those experiences. And that type of thing, and even other simple things, and this is not news to anybody, but like trines, for example, trines. Everyone always says, oh, it's easy and flow, but you can be lazy and complacent. My experience with trines is not always so much flow. Sometimes it's a flood, and floods do not always feel particularly comfortable. So even that, I think, and those little things that make a big difference in your day-to-day practice or working with astrology, even just a slightly different perspective of that, because people ask questions about house system all the time. But to your point, Barry, I've never heard someone give a good, hey, here's actually a bunch of people who had different experiences, and here's actually how this lines up. Maybe it exists somewhere, but I haven't seen it. I'd be super interested. Like I would buy that book or watch that thing or engage in that conversation, because then maybe I would want to relook at how I'm using porphyry. Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly right. That's the kind of energy that I really would love to see us bringing to our new events, is this ability to create discussions and sort of panel feedback that's not necessarily top-down experts teaching students, although again, that's valuable too. There's just already a lot of that out there. And I think because we're in this unique position that we can facilitate these conversations with the resources that we have, I mean, let's have a panel of people who come on and talk about their grand trines that they have
Yeah.
in their charts, right? I mean, I certainly know people with grand trines that get things to work really well well, and then some that deal with excess. I
Hmm.
mean, again, it's also like, I want to hear about the people that have a grand cross in their chart, or people who are practitioners who have had clients who have grand crosses in their charts and describing some of the stories that they've heard. Again, it's like testimony from those of us who are out in the field, not just studying astrology, but living it, teaching it, learning about it from clients. I mean, that's the sort of energy I would love to see more of.
And this is, maybe this sounds weird, but this is what just comes upon me as we're talking about this, that bringing to a conversation, instead of I need to have all my information figured out and I need to be right, I need to know what I'm talking about. What if we actually came at the conversation with a lot of things that are more like questions, don't know, what about this, observe that? That's a really different field of experience than feeling like we have to come into something, including an event, knowing everything. Sometimes it's the question, like, what if you just have an amazing question to pose, right? That is probably more valuable than an answer, no? And so that's kind of, at least that's the spirit of the energy that I'm hoping that we bring more to the community at large. And eventually, our website is still going through some its own transitions. It's going through its own Pluto transit. But once it gets all in ship shape, like we will have forums, right? A different things set up where there will be places to have these conversations as well. And so just in general, right, that spirit of coming together for how can we understand better? How can we actually make things better? What can we do to actually support people in the community? Because again, as vice president, I feel like that's my job. My job is to support the president, of course, as the VP. But overall, I feel my responsibility with ISAR is to make the things available that make life better for astrologers, right? And so to do that, I need to know what's needed and I need to know those different views, because otherwise I'm operating off of some old systems, some old ideas that really may not fit. And that's why I think I'm just saying, so let me know, let us know.
I
Yeah.
think that's a great point. Again, as a events coordinator for ESAR, part of what we're trying to figure out is what sort of events actually serve the community that we have nowadays. I mean, ESAR and a lot of the other orgs that people know of have existed long before social media existed, long before there was an entire shift in the way that teaching happens. I mean, you don't have to go drive down to your local metaphysical store to take the astrology course. You can purchase videos and online classes from some of the most amazing astrologers, and it's all right out there. So it does beg the question, what is it that we, as a longtime legacy astrology organization, can offer in a changing world? And one of those things is just the idea that we are going to be responsive to people's suggestions rather than assuming that we know what the community wants. We are in the process of transforming. That's like the Pluto, buzzword, transforming. We could say death and destruction followed by rebirth, however we want to use our Pluto keywords, right?
Yeah.
But the fact is that we don't know what the end result of the transformation that we're going through right now is. And sort of being authentic and transparent about that and asking the community to participate with us feels like much more in line with the values of not just us, but what I hear from our other current board directors is that we all seem to be sharing this vision for wanting to do something differently, that is more transparent, that is more authentic, that is more diverse, and that's more participatory. And I feel like we are doing it. It's starting to happen, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, and just to feel like that, like we're also just humans like that, and that human connection is super important. And so we've been thinking too, like just on the board, how do we do that? To your point, we are doing this now, but how do we do this more? How do we be so like I'm a real person sitting in my little space, doing my stuff. I got my own challenges and I have my own, things going on, but that I do this, meaning I serve on the ISAR board because I love astrology, because it has changed my life in such a way that I want more people to have that if they want it, right? Like that is the heart of why I choose to give back. And I would say I receive an equal to what I'm giving. So I'm not trying to say this in a sense of like, oh, I'm just here giving. But me, my draw to do that is I'm thinking that when I was quite early in learning astrology, and I did get on the board of the Washington State Astrological Association, those connections and those learning about, how people were doing different things and the exposure to those speakers as a newer astrologer, that was, I mean, that totally did change my life, right? Having and I've said this before in a lot of different occasions, but for me, I have so much Cancer and Leo in my chart. I can take things very personal, right? Astrology helps me be objective. Like it was like one of the first great tools where I was like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like I can actually understand this bigger picture. I can step out, kind of get out of my orientation, and I can have a better appreciation for what's going on around me. That in itself changed, my life and my ability to show up and be in situations. So it doesn't always have to be some big fancy technique with astrology. Sometimes it's really small and simple, but having sort of the people and the experiences and sometimes being able to be part of something that we build together, that in itself, especially if you are newer to astrology, that can make all the difference. And we're not just saying like, yeah, we're do that for you. We're saying we want you to be part of it because that perspective is so important to really being able to find the next best steps for us. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it for me, it all is also centered in the people. I mean, just like a chart, doesn't mean anything until it's attached to a person, an event, an
Right.
entity. It's just a flat piece of paper that says this is what time it was at some time. But then the magic of what we do is when we, interpret that as a way of connecting with people for whom that moment in time, whether it was their birth or the birth of their business or something, that was vital. And then we exchange the information. I mean, all the astrologers I know who I respect will probably agree that the way we learn astrology the best is from our conversations with our clients and other people. I mean, I have a basic understanding of what the symbols in astrology mean, maybe slightly more than basic, but I also try to listen to people tell me how these placements play out, how their chart comes alive, what happened when this transit occurred, because it doesn't always fit exactly how we might presume that it would if we are showing up to a chart with sort of the idea that we know everything and we're gonna tell you how it is. And it's been the same for my experience teaching, which is that I enjoyed the teaching part where I was conveying, the basic meanings of the symbols. But then we got to a certain point in class where I was like, well, this is all that I'm going to teach you. Like, I'm not the expert on classics, history, celestial mechanics. Like I know enough about all of that to be competent, but those are not my specialties.
Mhm.
So what I really want to do is listen to all of us talk about charts. And so when I transitioned from teaching to then sort of facilitating astrology salons where people would show up and just bring either a question or a chart or there's something going on right now that we're going to talk about, like oh, did you notice that Mercury, I think today as we're talking, Mercury is going across the border from Pisces to Aries, maybe during this conversation or directly before. Like, what does one experience when these things happen? I mean, just talking about that, I mean,
Well,
is go ahead, please.
it's
Please.
just funny because it's coming a little later, but this is so perfect because we're literally coming out in this conversation in some ways, right? So Mercury from Pisces to Aries is like out of the safe little womb container of here I am to sort of like out, and I feel like that's in part we didn't plan it this way, but it's perfect because that's how I feel that I want us to be more. I want us to be, out. I mean, like, like face forward out. Here I am, right? Not hidden somewhere behind something. or pulling strings, right? Like that whole type of thing. No, out here forward. Because, in any organization, I feel like that's what you do is you're working for the people, right? But if you're not out with the people and you don't know what the people want, then what are you actually doing? Which to me gets back to the Pluto transit, which really is re-looking at what works and what doesn't work so you can regenerate and really empower things in a way that aligns with something that has meaning, right? Pluto's about truth. It's getting to the truth of stuff, even when it gets a little bit messy. So yeah, sometimes our conversations or maybe even things we do in events or things in our forum, sometimes things will come up that maybe will be a little uncomfortable. If we can still do it with kindness and respect, it's awesome because that's when we grow. If we all agree, we're probably not, something new is not happening. So
I don't want to be
yeah,
part of an organization where everybody agrees with me all the
no,
time.
yeah,
I
yeah.
already have that organization. It's inside my head, right? Like
Stop.
that's not bringing me closer to people.
Good point. Love it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh.
I am excited about actually getting into the events that we're doing because, most of the time I've been on the board, as I said, in addition to events coordinator, I'm also serving as treasurer. And to be quite frank with everybody, my responsibilities as treasurer have taken up most of my
Mm.
tenure so far, sort of getting things, organized on the infrastructural end. And we have made some great strides in the 6 months that I've been involved. But the events piece is where we actually connect with why we're doing this to begin with.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm so excited about the upcoming events. And, for me, maybe I'll get to play out some of my talk show host ambitions by, I look forward to people, if there's anyone out there who has some great angle on astrology, or they're really excited about what they're doing, they're excited about their work or something that they are researching, let me talk to you on camera, kind of like we're doing right now, for like a half hour during one of these events. Not only to give your work some more exposure, but because I'm just interested in finding out the different ways that people use astrology. I mean, I said this before, but astrologers are some of the most intelligent and interesting people that I've ever met. Because I get this question when people find out I'm an astrologer. They have their preconceived notions that we're all, wearing, purple robes with like, stars. And I was going to say stars in our background. And then I look at my background. So yeah, stars in my background. But, really, astrologers are people that know a lot about astronomy, physics, foreign languages, history, culture, because that's the backdrop to how we all came to astrology from one angle or another. And so the things that folks are interested in, their weird little obsessions, the area of knowledge that they know a ton about, I want to talk to you about it. So come reach out to us at info@isarastrology.com and let me know about the wacky thing that you're interested in. And maybe I'll interview you, or Tara will, or another one of our board directors. We can have a conversation on camera about it.
Yeah, and we're thinking within, and again, none of this is really pretty fluid, like how we're feeling right now, which is also exciting because we don't have to be locked into something, but we're thinking, events that are shorter, less expensive, again, more sort of hanging out, feeling like we're being part of community together. And so we truly say this when that 30-minute interview, just you sharing your idea or your research or something, that is like wow, this really was like a big light bulb for me. That doesn't have to require, a whole bunch of prep either. It's like, just come and be present. In fact, oftentimes that's better. Barry, we did not talk about the international aspect of our organization, which in addition to having research in the name, right? International is also in the name. And so that's
Totally putting the I in international. Exactly.
because I know you've been talking that a lot about that too. And also just the different ways that, um, different places do astrology and the way that it's received where you are and how that comes together for you, because some of us don't know a lot about that from different places. So it's not even just the astrology itself, but the experiences with it. You probably would describe this better because I've heard you talk about this recently, and I thought, yeah, there's room for more of that too, because not that other organizations don't have some international aspects, but we really like this idea of feeling like that we sort of are the world of astrologers. Like that is important to us. And so we were then specifically Not that we don't want people that are local in the United States as well, we do, but especially, right, if you are in other countries besides the United States, we really want more of that, more involvement, more representation, more than we have now.
Yeah. As when I was first getting involved on the board, I asked a friend of mine who was a former board director, tell me what you think ESAR's greatest assets are. And without, batting an eye, his first response was the international focus, that we have a reputation and also sort of networking throughout the world in a way that is really unique to our organization, and that we probably don't tap into that as a resource enough. And I know, we would be guilty if we were accused of being a little bit United States centric. And I, for one, am really committed to us breaking out of that, which means, hearing about the work that's going on in other countries that maybe hasn't reached the United States or the English speaking world as much. So astrologers that are well known perhaps in their country and we've never heard of them, or the way that astrology or certain techniques or the practice of it might be received differently based upon a local culture. Even just things like with language differences. I mean, anyone who's ever studied literature and translation knows that a poem that's in Spanish that gets translated to English can feel very different from one another. And I wonder about some of the terminology that's used in other languages that we could learn from somebody who is fluent in both, or a competent translator, to let us know about how the things that we sort of know really well in astrology are perhaps being described really differently in different languages or different places.
Yeah, my one of my astrologer friends, Ashwin Subramanian in India, when he and I get together and talk about things, just the way he says it makes me rethink even basic stuff. It's been so helpful to me. So I would say even when something like this idea, because the way we translate things sometimes picks up on nuances that you would not have thought that way. So to your point, it's amazing how those conversations, you all of a sudden could be like, whoa, Gemini, I would have never used that word for Gemini, right? And then you stop and you back up and you say, but that actually works. And then sometimes that opens this whole new pathway. And I think and sometimes it's hard because time zones are different, but I'm saying that effort's important because that to me is one of the big, big, big opportunities of being able to see and understand things differently, which that's what astrology is about, really. Right? Yeah. So I love that. I love
Absolutely.
that, Barry, that you brought that up. It's so cool. Mhm.
I mean, and we know that these translation things are a big deal because we just have to look at our colleagues that are translating all of these ancient
Oh,
Greek texts, and they'll go back and forth about what that word should mean in modern English versus what it meant in ancient Greece. And these are very passionate debates.
yeah. Well, and then we get down to a level of even what does the word mean, right? And then so I mean that in itself is, but one shift of word, I mean, we know this can shift the whole perception of something. So I think what we're saying is we want that, right? We want that, and that's not something I can do by myself. I need someone that can bring that in or show that or illuminate that. Um,
Right. I mean, being able to change one's perspective, broaden one's perspective, requires input that's different than the input that we're getting, right? This is just classic Jupiter energy in astrology, right? Like that's why that is all about, going beyond where you've been before, whether that's going, to a different place or to a different language or to a different area of knowledge. Expansion is how we broaden our minds. So again, to remind everyone, I'm Barry Perlman and the events coordinator of ISAR, and I'm looking for folks who are interested in participating, helping the ISAR board put together new events, new event ideas. So whether that means you actually want to be part of planning an event, or whether that just means you want to participate, whether you want to speak, be part of a conversation, or even just email us an idea of something you would want to see, you can reach us at info@isarastrology.com.
And I'm Tara All, Vice President. And I think we can summarize to say we need input for output. So that is Otherwise, output on its own is it's not going to be great. So that request, all the things Barry just said come from me as well. And I think maybe what I want to say at this point is that I just want to thank everybody who's watching, right? Because it means at least like you're involved and you care. Because I feel like at this point in time, there's a lot of ways in the community, not just astrology, right? Astrology is just another reflection of all the different things going on in different areas. You know, we're not special in that way, but there's a lot of opportunity right now to sort of realign with what is important. And I know that's something that both Barry and I are committed to. And so we're just excited that you have taken the time to hang out and listen to us. And if you do feel drawn to be part of that, to be part of a group of people that all kind of want to do that, we are here, right? And we want that to be more than just us. So I think that's just me extending my invitation to say, I'd like to know you and I'd like to know your ideas and I'd like to hear all your insights. And I'd like you to say something that's going to change my perception so that I move about my day and do things differently. Yeah. So thank you.
I love that. And
Mm.
come have fun with us because it's getting more fun by the day. So I really,
Yeah.
I really want you to come have fun with us. Okay.
I don't think we can stop recording. So
Okay.
I don't
Well,
think it
this
matters
can just
because
be
Nick,
trimmed off. But I just want to say that was awesome.
that
We
was fun.
have a good
Yeah,
chemistry doing this sort of
we do.
thing.
Yeah.
Um, and there's got to be something in there. I mean, I think someone besides us should watch it so they can tell us what is the best part to put. But
Yeah. And it
we
might
got
be,
at least
yeah.
go ahead.
I could even see Nicholas like grabbing a little clip. Like it could be like even three different little parts, but yeah.
I mean, that's what I was thinking. That's what I imagined was like two to three different short videos. And then if like I did this with Clarissa, I did this with, or you did this with Cameron, like if we just did this
Yep.
throughout, I think that we're going to generate, this is the content that's authentic. This
I
is it.
for a long time, I feel like the personal contact has been missing. I don't think they know us, you know?
Agreed.
And I don't even know that, I mean, it's not reasonable to think that everyone's going to have like a super personal relationship with us, but I think about the few things that I follow, right? Or the very few things that I pay, you know, the 11 or $9 or whatever a month to keep up with. It's because whatever that person does, even though it's a broader message, I feel like on some levels, I know I can vibe with that person. I don't think we've even given people an opportunity to do that with us because we're not present.
Agreed.
So
I mean, nobody knows who I am.
yeah, me neither.
So now they will.
Yeah. And you're right.
Um,
We could think about this too when it comes to events. Probably you and I would do very well, you know, hosting something together or doing whatever. So that's
that
fun.
way.
Yeah.
Because like just like you said on, is this doesn't require preparation. We like did a few bullet points
Yeah.
and we just go. And it's like if it's authentic and if it's like rough around the edges and not perfectly smooth, I think that's awesome.
Maybe this is like, right, because we determined that my Mercury's on your ascendant, right? So that's maybe that's that nice.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
we just like, okay, we're good. Yeah.
It's whatever it is, it's a good vibe.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm gonna take the rest of the day off from ISAR.
Yes, I think I support that, Barry.
It's
Thank
been
you.
quite a couple of weeks, so I'm gonna take the rest off. And we're recording, so I'll just leave it there.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning with me,
Oh,
Barry.
likewise. Cool. Okay.
All right. See you
Later.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.